You ready to go?
Shoot.
Hello, Retromoviegirl fans. My name is Retromoviegirl, and this is my Audible mention section of Audible audiobook countdown top 10 list. So, and the first part of Audible mentions is Relationship Restoration by Juniper Court. It's part of the Juniper Court series, and it's a collection of different authors that write in the same kind of area. Juniper Court is about a wacky neighborhood full of wacky couples that do different things. They're all romantic comedy type books, but this one, Relationship Restoration by Juniper Court, is about Jane and Philip. Jane and Philip are a middle-aged couple who are a lawyer and a blogger, and one day Jane is asked to host like a lingerie party. A lingerie party is like, if you remember those parties, like Tupperware parties, except for adults, like lingerie and adult toys. You host the party, your friends bring, or your friend brings the toys and lingerie from the company they work for, and they spend the entire party teaching you how to use the toys and what everything is for. So Jane decides to host one of those parties at her house, and she's washing the toys as you are supposed to according to the packaging, and her husband comes home and finds this big adult toy and says, "What are you doing with this?" And imagine if your mother-in-law saw this, and it's just a whole thing. Anyway, that inspires Jane and Philip to spice up their sex lives, and it leads into how can we have the best time, reconnecting, since we have more time now, since our kids are grown. They met in college and had 2 girls, and their idea is how can we best utilize our newfound time together without being boring or stuffy. So they decide to go for a challenge, and the first challenge is for Jane to dress up like a lady of the night and meet her husband at a hotel bar. Hilarity ensues when Jane and her husband, Philip, have to convince the cops that Jane is not a hooker and that her husband is not a John, and they're actually who they say they are. Everything beyond that point becomes more romantic, and they're able to utilize their time together and realize that maybe they took each other for granted over the years, being busy with kids and, Philip works for a law firm and being busy with kids and writing her blog. She hasn't necessarily had the time for a more fulfilling romantic life. So that is the gist of Relationship Restoration by Juniper Court, and I'll be back for the next clip with Caught Together by Penny Winter. Caught Together by Penny Wilder is next. Caught Together is the story of Stella. Stella is somewhere in her 40s. They don't specifically specify her age, but her son Brandon, who is college age, comes home with his friend and Trevor for the holidays, along with her other family members, her sister, her brother, and her brother's wife, and their twins, to spend the holidays. And Stella develops an attraction for Brandon's friend, and it leads into, I wish Brandon's father, her ex-husband, was a lot more like Trevor when they were younger, because maybe their relationship would have lasted a a lot longer than it actually did. And they start to have like a relationship and start to sleep together, but no one can know because of the age difference and the shame, because he's like 20 and she's like 40 and she doesn't know how people are gonna react to that. But Trevor makes her feel young again and vital and notices her and thinks that she's hot and all that. But things come to a head when Brandon's girlfriend Lee discovers them and starts to make fun of them. But Trevor is the one who says to everyone who discovers this, because this is in the middle of like a family holiday get together, that she comes along and says what she says. But Trevor is the one to point out that her brother and her sisters and everybody has been complaining about when is she gonna find somebody, when is she gonna be happy, which she is already happy with her job and everything that's going on in her life, but because she's not in a relationship, she's not considered happy by traditional standards. But Trevor does point out that they said at least 10 times during the story, when is she gonna find somebody, when is she gonna find somebody, and when she does find somebody, they react badly because they don't like it, because there's an age difference, and if it was somebody her own age, they would have a different reaction. But overall, it's a younger man, older woman romance. It's funny. It takes place during the holidays. It really has a lot of substance to it for something that is outside of what I normally read on Audible. But it's fun, fantastic, and I enjoy it. Now, when I come back for the next clip, it will be The Millionaire Wins the Game by Melanie Ann. The Millionaire Wins the Game by Melanie Ann is about a man named Joseph Anderson and his attempts to find his male children love interest, because he would like grandchildren, and his sons don't seem to want to like hurry it along. They're all happy being kind of playboys. So Joseph gets the idea, well, Lucas is taking over the company, and Lucas's secretary is getting older and she would like to retire, and he hires a woman named Amy who has no family, she didn't have a great childhood. Her mother was absent and she didn't have a really great childhood and doesn't know her father, and she would really like to have a family. So initially he asked her questions like, do you have a boyfriend? And all the questions that you're not really supposed to ask in this type of environment, he asked just to make sure that the way is clear for his son in case his son Lucas is interested. His son Lucas initially vetoes the idea of a new secretary and doesn't need one, and it's just meddlesome for his father to hire somebody. But over time, he does come to become attracted to Amy, leading to an unplanned pregnancy, leading to a quickie wedding. But there are a couple of scenes that stick out to me, like when he goes to her home for the first time. She lives in this apartment building. It's an unsavory place in an unsavory neighborhood, and he proceeds to say some things that are less than kind, and she's like, you know what, I take care of my things. My things are nicely well laid out. My things are not less important than your fancy things. But eventually they learn to kind of get along, and it doesn't matter how the marriage started. That's one thing that Lucas says to her. It doesn't matter how the marriage started. It just matters how we get along now. So there is one part where she is super pregnant. I think she's like about 8 months, 7 months pregnant. and she's wearing a oversized coat and some lingerie so that she can meet Lucas at the office and hopefully make love to him, because he hasn't been home and he's been distant. He's been distant because he doesn't want to fall in love with Amy, but unbeknownst to him, or maybe he's unaware that he's already falling in love with her, but it feels like he has to protect his heart, because one time his mother did say that he had a tendency to fall in love with women when he was younger and think that they were in love with him when all they wanted was his family's money, because his family is they do have a business in finance and global interests, so that would be interesting to a woman, especially gold diggers. And his mother was like, he thought these women were in love with him and he was in love with them, but in reality they were in love with his money. But Amy doesn't want anything to do with actually his money. She just loves her husband. And over time you see a couple of things and you're like, well, in ordinary circumstances, you'd be like, well, maybe this situation would be best served with just a conversation, but that's not how romance novels work. You have to have a situation where you have a misunderstanding, like his ex-girlfriend showing up to the office and Amy jumping to conclusions that he's automatically sleeping with her. That gives a wide range of ideas. So it just can't be something simple as we sit down and have a conversation. That's not how this works. And when I come back, that's it for this one. When I come back, we'll talk about Xrated by Lily Harlem. Polly and Lucan, they're a British couple. Polly is become dissatisfied with the physical relationship, but is afraid to tell her husband. One day, Lucan comes home from work and finds his wife in a compromising position with, let's just say, an adult toy and some not safe for work movies. And initially he's angry and upset and thinks that Polly is having an affair or indulging in some sort of something. So they make a plan to make their sex life more exciting so that Polly won't leave the marriage. She's never wanted to leave her marriage. She just wanted to spice it up a little bit. So they do what they do, and they learn to spice up their marriage, and they learn more about communication and relying on each other and having a little bit more fun so that it's interesting and stimulating for Polly at the same time. And you're like, this is what makes it work. The fact that they don't go to other people. She had an outlet, but it wasn't another person. That's the important thing to remember. It wasn't another person. She wasn't cheating. She was doing some unusual things, yes, but she wasn't doing like bad things that could actually ruin her marriage. She was just trying to like make it better for herself. And maybe she was embarrassed to tell her husband that she was dissatisfied. I don't know. There are lots of reasons why that could happen. But it's very comforting to see them work it out and come to an agreement and be like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and to experiment and to find happiness within each other, within what is already there, instead of going outside the marriage and trying to really mess yourself up with having an affair. So that is X-Rated by Lily Harlem. And when I come back, we'll talk about Spurs and Satin by Vanessa Vale. Spurs and Satin by Vanessa Vale was actually published under the Wallflower Bride series, and this was originally Hyacinth's story. Hyacinth is one of 8 girls who are adopted by two women who used to run a brothel. They adopted 8 girls who lost their families during the Chicago fire. Hyacinth is quiet, understated, and sometimes she can be a bit of a doormat when it comes to her sisters. But one day, this man named Jackson comes to live at her ranch, the Lennox Ranch, and what happens is that the helper on the ranch, his son, his name is Big Ed, and his son comes to stay at the ranch and help him with the chores, like feeding the animals, fixing different types of farm equipment, and he becomes attracted to Hyacinth. But one thing about Hyacinth is that she has learned that she thinks that love is not for her, that nobody will ever love her. She experienced a dramatic event at the age of 14. Her and her friend were swimming at a lake, and something happened. The current got strong during like a weather event, and her friend Jane drowned and was killed, and her body was later found. So she's suffering from survivor's guilt with that. She doesn't think that she's deserving of love because Jane can never have love and affection from her husband because she's dead. That's pretty much basically what's going on. But I think Jackson helps her see that what you thought happened, you were 14 years old and you still see it through a 14-year-old girl's eyes, and it's not exactly correct because your sisters, he says something like, I just fixed the wheel on the wagon and maybe it will come loose and your sisters will get hurt or injured or killed. Would that be your fault? And would you have survivors go over it? She goes, no, but I convinced Jane to, he says, that could have happened anyway to either one of you and it's not your fault. And I would like, she eventually comes to understand that it's not her fault and that she does deserve love. Point number 2 is Jackson is a sharpshooter in the army and is convinced that he's a killer he convinced that he's a killer and doesn't deserve love because he killed people. He didn't actually just kill people at random. He was assigned to protect the regiment, and people had to die in order for him to protect the people inside his army. He's a sharpshooter, and what Hyacinth says is that you were protecting people, you were doing your job, you weren't just randomly, indiscriminately killing people. If you hadn't done that, a lot of other people would have been dead, and eventually they come to terms with both of their wounds and learn to love each other and maybe even have a baby and find some sort of happiness despite what happened to them on both accounts. So that's why I like this story, because it shows that you can overcome your wounds, you can find love and happiness despite what happened to you, despite the PTSD, despite the survivor's guilt from Hyacinth's part. It's really a comfortable story that has a good ending. I like the ending. And like I said, for all of these videos, there will be things in the description. There will be the copy from the Audible page. There will be the synopsis. The synopsis will be linked, will be written in the description. Every author's website will be also linked in the description, so you can check out their books and check out their websites and join their newsletter. Feel free, and tell me what you're reading. Are you reading paperbacks, audiobooks, hardbacks, ebooks? What are you reading and in what genres? Feel free to leave me recommendations in the comment section of this video or any other video on this playlist. And I'll talk to you very soon in my very next video. Bye!